Well, Zelenskyy, we're told, was begging to stay and work this out.
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelenskyy again.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of...
Wait a minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. If you didn't have our military equipment, your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate.
In case you missed it, history was made today when President Trump and Vice President Vance engaged in a very public spat with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy over peace negotiations with Russia, or should I say the lack thereof. The clip that went viral at the end of the meeting does not show what led up to the spat. Zelenskyy was rolling his eyes or shaking his head every time Trump talked about a peace deal.
This death taking place as we speak, and I don't want to have that. You know, think of the parents, whether they're in Russia or Ukraine, think of the parents of all these people being killed needlessly.
They came to our territory.
Should have never started. This would have, if I were president, this would have never started.
Zelenskyy was rude, condescending, and at one point told Trump that if he essentially bent the knee to the neocon plan of NATO baiting Russia into endless hostilities, that maybe Trump would get his very own bronze statue in the Oval Office.
I think that if President or when he will stop Putin, if President Trump will bring peace to our country, I think he will be on this wall, I think.
Oh, the disrespect. Now, Trump played nice most of the time, saying, "It's an honor to host you."
Very much. It's an honor to have President Zelenskyy of Ukraine, and we've been working very hard, very close. So we've actually known each other for a long time. We've been dealing with each other for a long time and very well.
And that Trump actually thinks his clothes are pretty nice.
Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit.
Yes.
And I do like your clothing, by the way.
Yeah, really?
Even though I think he's a great guy, by the way. But I don't know if you two like each other. But you know what? I think he's dressed.
I like this guy.
I think he's dressed beautifully.
So I have more serious things.
This came after Trump lightly roasted Zelenskyy for not wearing a suit when they'd first met up.
He's all dressed up today.
But by the end of the meeting, after Zelenskyy had shown zero interest in a peace deal or making any compromises, Trump finally took the gloves off.
One more question.
Hey, I want to respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, and now a fight breaks out between Zelenskyy and Vance.
He occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. During 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him. A lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me.
So Zelensky's bringing up the Russian invasion of Crimea in 2014 without mentioning the CIA-backed, NATO-backed Euromaidan riots the same year.
I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire, all of them told me that he will never go. We signed with him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know
bless.
that.
You will not have war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're
So Trump finally hits back against Zelensky's arrogance, his condescension.
no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what
Remember
you're
this.
doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very
You will
good.
feel influence.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself to be in a
from
very
the
bad
very
position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From the
it.
very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a good
President,
position.
I
You don't
was
have the cards right now. With us, you start having
not
cards.
playing cards.
Right now, you don't.
I'm very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
Life is just one game of poker when you think about it.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people. You're gambling with World War III.
what do you think
You're
about-
gambling with
what do you
World
think
War
about-
III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's
with all
backed
respect to
you
your
far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once? This
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October.
Yes, let's revisit that briefly. In September 2024, Zelensky visited the Scranton Army ammunition plant, praising U.S. military aid just weeks before the election. His visit kicked off a U.S. tour that included meetings with Biden and Kamala Harris, who was running for president, remember, reinforcing his alignment with the Democrat administration. Zelensky was seen smiling and laughing with a number of Democrats, including Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania governor, while signing bombs as if they were a groupie's tits at a Kid Rock concert.
Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can
not
speak.
speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's
Can I-
in big
can-
trouble.
can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No.
Can
You've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this.
You're not winning this. And he's saying, I know, and then he stops.
You have a damn good chance of
we are
coming out
staying,
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You haven't been alone.
Ukraine hasn't been alone. It's literally a NATO pawn.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
We gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment.
You
And you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about West?
If you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me.
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I
And
tell you.
just say thank you.
I said a lot of
Except
times
that there-
thank you
except
to
that-
American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running low
I know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't, please,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're
I
saying
said-
you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a
with
ceasefire.
guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what-
That
what
wasn't
this
with me.
means.
That was with a guy named Biden who was not a smart person.
Ask our people how you feel about a ceasefire. You mean the people who you won't let vote in elections? People who would potentially vote you out?
That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
So when they say you got to be more thankful, what they're saying is you can't just waltz in here with your shitty little Henley that you say is, I don't know, you're implying it's like $5,000 shirt, and pretend that you have any leverage just because the neocon controlled foreign policy status quo of the US has hitherto been to blindly support NATO's encroachment on Russia's border.
Mr. Vice President, I'm sorry.
It's going to be a tough deal to make, because the attitudes have to change.
What if Russia breaks ceasefire? What if Russia breaks peace talks? What do you do then? I understand that it's a heated conversation right now.
What are you saying?
She's asking what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
Well, what if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war. And he went through it. He was accused of all that stuff. He had nothing to do with it. It came out of Hunter Biden's bathroom. It came out of Hunter Biden's bedroom. It was disgusting. And then they said, oh, the laptop from hell was made by Russia. The 51 agents. The whole thing was a scam. And he had to put up with that. He was being accused of all that.
A lot of Pulitzers were handed out for that scam.
All I can say is this. He might have broken deals with Obama and Bush, and he might have broken them with Biden. He did, maybe. Maybe he didn't. I don't know what happened. But he didn't break them with me. He wants to make a deal. I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing.
So did you hear that? Very important.
I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty.
So Zelensky's acting like this is not an option. Zelensky's acting like there's no way the US will ever not back this NATO excursion. And Trump is actively calling his bluff and saying, well, it could happen. You want a FAFO?
But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that.
The formal reason for their meeting today was to ink a deal giving the U.S. access to Ukraine's deposits of rare earth minerals. Trump says the U.S. is trying to get some of its money back from sending so much aid to Ukraine. But most of the mining operations would happen in the eastern pro-Russian part of Ukraine, and hence would only be possible with approval from Putin. Hence, this minerals deal was supposed to be a stepping stone to a ceasefire, which would eventually pave the way for a peace deal. After today, the minerals deal was canceled. It now seems obvious that the deal was merely a pretense to get Zelenskyy in the room in order to demonstrate to the world his lack of willingness to support a peace deal. It was a brilliant chess move by Trump since it puts pressure on NATO-backed Zelenskyy to publicly admit to the world he's not actually interested in peace, despite having absolutely no leverage to resist peace. Zelenskyy pretending to have leverage actually betrays the fact that he is backed by shadowy deep state operatives. After their heated exchange, Zelenskyy was kicked out of the White House and reportedly begged to to return.
This is what I was told. The president has kicked Zelenskyy out of the White House. His delegation right now is telling him that he's got to go home. The president felt disrespected. Officials in the room felt that beyond the language barrier that we've heard some discussion about, Zelenskyy's body language, shrugging and eye-rolling, was ungrateful, disrespectful, and the president feels that Zelenskyy is not ready for peace, and he can come back when he's ready to talk about peace, but he's not in that position right now, and Zelenskyy is being told he's got to go. The lunch that they were supposed to have is sitting right outside the hallway, and the press staffers are going to be eating that lunch. This is really pretty incredible. We see the
Jackie,
SUV,
hang on with us
Zelensky's
one moment.
SUV.
If you look to your left, you're going to see him. Let's watch. You may be watching the floor fall through this moment in international relations and diplomacy, or this might be the art of the deal, and we're not going to know for some time. Jackie, it appears that even going into this meeting that this relationship was not great. About a week ago, President Trump called Zelenskyy a dictator. He was asked about that yesterday with the British Prime Minister, and he said, "Did I say that?" Next question, as if he wanted to brush that off and make sure that things today went smoother.
Well, Zelenskyy, we're told, was begging to stay and work this out. The Ukrainians were begging the president and the White House.
So you heard Fox News report that Zelenskyy was evidently begging to return to the White House after being kicked out after that very hostile meeting. Here's Trump explaining exactly what happened.
Mr. President, how long do you think it will take for Zelenskyy to want peace and be invited back to the White House?
Well, he says he wants it now. He wants to come back right now, but I can't do that.
Are you going to end? What does Zelenskyy need to do to restart talks with you?
He's got to say, I want to make peace. He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace. I don't want to fight a war any longer. His people are dying. He doesn't have the cards, just so you understand it, okay? I can I don't have to tell you that.
So Zelenskyy waltzed into the meeting today as if he had an ace up his sleeve, meaning the backing of NATO and what's left of the CIA and US deep state intelligence apparatus. And Trump reminded him that there's a new sheriff in town. So after getting kicked out, humiliated, begging to return, being told no, Zelenskyy decides to go on Fox News with Bret Baier to do damage control. But he ended up making it worse.
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect President and I respect American people. And if, I don't know, if I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad. I think maybe sometimes some things we have to discuss out of media, with all respect to democracy and to a free media. But there are things that where we have to understand the position of Ukraine and Ukrainian. And I think that is the most important thing. Yes, we are partners. You know, we are very close partners. We have to be fair. We have to be very free.
So even in broken English, it's just a bunch of meaningless words, and he won't. And Zelensky's refusing to back down. By the way, did you notice that Bret Baier at one point just looked like he was like on his cell phone, not listening to Zelenskyy? But it's funny, even in broken English, Zelensky's still capable of better quality word salad than Kamala Harris. So Zelenskyy refused to apologize to Trump for being extremely disrespectful, vacillating between acting like an angry child and a tough guy. Even though he has zero leverage in this situation, his only leverage is pretending that the neocons in both parties still control the government. Sorry, their time is over. I'll get into that at the end. And then instead of thanking Trump, Zelenskyy said something pretty incredible. He said that he prefers to thank the American people, us, because your people, meaning Americans, have to save our people.
Last thing, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Do you think your relationship with Donald Trump, President Trump, after today, can be salvaged?
Can be. Yes, of course, because it's relations more than two presidents. It's the historical relations, strong relations between our people. And that's why I always began with to thank your people, from our people. And this is the most important. And of course, thankful to President and of course to Congress, first of all to your people. Your people helped to save our people. People, the first, human rights, the first. This is very, very important, and we are thankful and sorry for this. I mean, we wanted very much to have only strong relations, and I'm very calm that we will have it.
So Zelenskyy peddled NATO propaganda during the meeting, refusing to admit that Ukraine is losing the war and having difficulty enlisting troops to fight.
You bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
Zelenskyy also claimed that Russia started the war. This is highly mendacious because it's actually been NATO and the US via the CIA, who else? USAID actually, which have baited Russia into war since the mid-90s. It was Gorbachev who relinquished East Germany and allowed Germany to reunify and join NATO. At the time, the agreement was that NATO would not try to encroach on Russia's border, since that's a red line for Russia. If Russia's enemy is allowed to put missiles directly on their border, then it's game over for them. It's a direct threat to Russian national security. That would be like if the Soviet Union had tried to put missiles in a place like, say, Cuba. Oh wait, and how did JFK stop nuclear war from breaking out in the early 60s? He agreed to rescind the US missiles in Turkey and Italy, which directly threatened Russia, at the time Soviet Union. So why would NATO, along with the US deep state intelligence community, want to violate a national security red line and directly threaten Russia, thus baiting them into a war? There are lots of reasons, namely money. Mitch McConnell once admitted that aid to Ukraine isn't really going to Ukraine, it's going to US defense contractors.
McConnell was asked, can we really afford to spend $113 billion to Ukraine? He said, don't worry, it's not really going to Ukraine.
It's going to American defense manufacturers.
By the way, all owned by BlackRock. This war is essentially an elaborate money laundering scheme for defense contractors. And nearly all US media outlets lie about this. That's honestly probably why Fox News had Zelenskyy on. And why that earlier clip showing Zelenskyy begging to come back in, why the hosts on Fox News sounded somewhat negative about Trump's actions today. So this brings us to today. What is Trump's plan? What's his aim? Is he siding with Putin and with Russia? No, he wants détente with Russia, meaning no war. He wants to stop NATO infringement directly on Russia's border, and he wants World War III to not break out. Or in his own words,
Very good feeling. I think our country has really turned around. We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelenskyy, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up a strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death.
So Trump's admitting that Zelenskyy is essentially just a pawn for NATO, that Zelensky's trying to force Trump's hand here and engage in endless foreign wars. Trump wants peace, and he's very clear about that. He says he wants Zelenskyy to want peace. Otherwise, Zelenskyy can't come back to the table. Let's make this very clear. Trump knows that Putin is a dictator. Trump knows that Russia is not a liberal democracy. But that being said, he does not want to engage in NATO-backed regime change in Ukraine in order to ignite World War III. It's that simple. Now, things were very different under Obama and Biden. Under those two regimes, the CIA, via USAID, spent over $5 billion of our taxpayer money creating riots in the Ukraine in 2014, the Euromaidan protests, which eventually overthrew the pro-Russian government. It was none other than Victoria Nuland, whose husband is one of the fathers of modern neoconservative ideology. It was Victoria Nuland who essentially handpicked the new pro-NATO government in Ukraine before the old government was even overthrown, again, by a NATO and US-backed coup. Now, there were a lot of interesting reactions to the fireworks today, but you would think that progressives like Andrew Yang and Bernie Sanders would side with peace over war. Bernie's base certainly thinks he's this kind-hearted 60s-era radical interested in redistributing wealth and world peace. And yet, today he said Trump berates Zelenskyy, the leader of a democratic country outrageously fighting Russian imperialism, while he allies himself with Putin, a dictator who started the bloodiest European war in 80 years. Sorry, President Trump, we believe in democracy, not authoritarianism. authoritarianism. The saddest part of this is that Bernie knows he's full of shit. Bernie understands the history. Bernie knows about the Gorbachev agreement. Bernie knows about NATO encroachment. Bernie knows that it is a red line and a direct threat to a nation's national security for one's enemies to plant missiles on their border. Even if Putin's a dictator and it's not a liberal democracy, it's still acting in rational self-interest for your country to not want missiles on your border that can directly shoot at you and kill you. This is NATO propaganda full stop to deny that it was the US-led NATO, which has been baiting Russia into war since, again, the mid-90s. Andrew Yang wasn't much better. Good luck courting the progressives in 2028 if he's trying to run. Why are Trump and Vance publicly railroading Zelenskyy? It's gross. It feels like they're carrying someone else's water. Oh, Trump's a Russian asset. Haven't heard that one before. Hot take, Yang. And of course, neocon hacks like John Bolton went completely insane and called for resignations.
Yeah, this is really one of the most disgraceful performances that I've seen, and I think it's important to understand that, in particular, Trump and Vance own this personally. This is the kind of attack on a country that's defending itself from an unprovoked aggression, and they just unleashed on Zelenskyy in public. And whether they planned it or not, I don't know. I'm not that concerned with questions of etiquette. I am concerned that the president, vice president of the United States have sided with the aggressor, with, as Mike Waltz was just saying there, somebody who's trying to recreate the Russian Empire, something he's been very clear about since 2005 at least.
Now, just a brief note on this point. It is true that Russia under Putin holds Gorbachev's actions in contempt and has expressed a strong interest in reabsorbing a lot of those former Soviet bloc countries. But of course, the point of that is to create a buffer so that NATO-controlled countries cannot plant missiles directly on their border. And of course, to be fair, Putin has plenty of expansionist dreams fitting for a dictator. But we have to be honest about the rational self-interest aspect of that particular form of expansion. Zelenskyy during the meeting tried to say that Russia's trying to take over the world, that Russia's going to invade Europe and then eventually the US. Seriously.
Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future.
But that might be the most spiderweb, cobweb covered Cold War take, vintage take in all of this. Russia is a backwater. The Soviet Union was actually much more powerful. Russia is just trying to protect itself and protect its borders. Putin's not going to invade Cincinnati. Back to Bolton.
Sadly, both Mike Waltz and Marco Rubio in the administration and apparently staying. I just say, remember, this is not the second month of Trump's tenure. This is the 50th month of his two-year term. And this is the point when somebody...
Two-year term, he means two terms.
Does 180 degrees from understanding American allies to backing America's adversaries, that you resign.
Mark, are you saying Marco Rubio should resign?
And Mike Waltz, this is really the time to do it. If they don't get out now, I think their reputations will suffer for a long, long time. And that would be sad, because their record in believing in a strong American national security policy has been very good up until now.
John Bolton is so stuck in the past, he's sounding a little dementia-addled like Biden, says two-year instead of two-term, and then is pretending like Trump is still surrounded on all sides, like the deep state is still out to get him and on the verge of putting him in jail. It's 2025. Bolton's government is no longer in charge. Marco Rubio, if anything, Trump is now the winning team. Bolton's saying that Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz and the administration should resign to save their careers, to protect themselves from the Trump disaster. If anything, they should be hitching their wagons as much as possible to this winning side, the new Trumpified GOP. Now, what I did not have on my bingo card today, although maybe I could have guessed it if I thought hard enough about it, is Lindsey Graham, who's been sucking at the teat of the military-industrial complex his entire career, suddenly reversing course and siding with Trump on this issue.
But I think complete, utter disaster. I've been to Ukraine 8 or 9 times since the war started. I understand the consequences of Putin's actions against Ukraine. I appreciate what the Ukrainian people have done. They fought like tigers. At the end of the day, I was hoping that this minerals deal, which would be transformative in the relationship, would go over well. I talked to Zelenskyy this morning. Don't take the bait. President Trump was in a very good mood last night. Somebody asked me, am I embarrassed about Trump? I have never been more proud of the president. I was very proud of J.D. Vance, standing up for our country. We want to be helpful. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelenskyy again. I think most Americans saw a guy that they would not want to go in business with. The way he handled the meeting, the way he fronted the president was just over the top. So I think the relationship between Ukraine and America is important, vitally important. But can Zelensky do a deal with the United States? After what I saw, I don't know.
This should come as a surprise to no one, but Lindsey Graham is up for re-election next year. And because his party has been totally Trumpified, he literally can't say no to Trump. Mitch McConnell already announced retirement, so he's full neocon, gives no Fs.
Providing assistance for the Ukrainians to defeat the Russians, that's the #1 priority for the United States right now.
McConnell's seat is actually open next year. Some people have actually suggested Scott Jennings of CNN run, which would be pretty interesting. Either way, history was made today in the sense that the U.S. deep state and concomitant foreign policy has been dominated by interventionist neocons, policies which have led to endless war and millions of lost lives, but a lot of profit. With Trump now in office and on the side of what the vast majority of Americans support, namely peace and using our tax dollars on ourselves, our own communities, shocker, the neocons' bloodthirsty warpath finally stops here. Victory has never tasted so sweet.